This is a Renegade Media Network podcast.
Let me tell you guys about a sponsor of this show, and that is Zippix toothpicks. They are wonderful flavored toothpicks that have nicotine in each one. You can find them at zippixtoothpicks.com. A lot of you are probably trying to kick a bad habit here in the new year. These are a great alternative to that habit. And come on, let's face it. They're sponsoring this show, so you know that's a good thing. But I'm telling you, they're the cheapest alternative on the market. They've got flavors. Let me tell you, right here, I've got my packet. Zippix toothpicks, spearmint spice. I love this flavor. They've got whiskey flavor. They've got clove flavor. They want to sponsor shows like mine, so that should make you want to give them some business. They've got a promo code with the Counterflow podcast. The promo code is BUCK. B-U-C-K, of course. So go to Zippix Toothpicks. That promo code, BUCK, will get you 10% off of your order. Once again, zippixtoothpicks.com, promo code BUCK for 10% off your order. They're delicious. They got just the right amount of nicotine in them, and you will enjoy them. Kick that nasty habit, and let's get to the show.
You are now listening to the Counterflow podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in fucking half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow podcast. I'm excited to finally get Vin Armani on this show. I've been meaning to do this for quite some time, but what better time to do it than to discuss his new book. His book is called Render Unto Caesar, Prophecy, Prophet, and Proof of Work in the Dim Age. And if you're not familiar with Vin, you got to stay tuned to this one. He coined that term, the dim age, that I mentioned there in the book title. And what is it, you may ask? Well, you're going to find out, because we're living in the dim age right now, and we get all into exactly why, what that means, how to navigate the dim age, how to find the light so it's not the dark age at this point. And this is going to be a great conversation. Vin Armani is a fascinating individual. There's no doubt about that. If you're not familiar with him, I will hook you immediately with this bio. I can tell you that right now. Vin Armani is a philosopher, serial tech entrepreneur, and crypto savage. In addition to being an author and speaker, he has made his living as a television star, film producer, high-end male escort. Yes, that is for real. Software developer, art gallerist, pirate radio station operator, DJ, music producer, and motorcycle courier.
From the faraway island of Saipan, Vin Armani, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I want to ask you how it is in the future. You're about 15 hours. I don't know how my night's going to be, but I could talk to you I was thinking about this interview, and I interviewed Dr. Sean Baker, and he's the only other person besides you that I was like, I could go on for hours on just one aspect of this person's life. For those listening that aren't familiar with you, I don't think that's many of them, but if there are some, right now, how would you describe what you do and who you are?
Oh, right this second?
Well, I mean, I'm doing a podcast. Because through many points of your life, it would be much different, I think.
Yeah. Where am I at right now? I'm definitely in a transition period in my life. I've had many reinventions. And right now I am really, it's really a process of digging deep into my spirituality. A lot has come out of the last year for me in terms of evolving and seeing a path to where I should be going. And probably for the first time in my life, I feel like now a very long-term path is starting to emerge for me. It's not completely clear, but I'm definitely getting the inklings and the orientation. And so where I'm moving now is really the watchword that I've been telling people is like, it's an exploration of tradition. So I'm finding that I am inside of or being pushed toward exploring tradition. And we're in a world right now where, let's say the last year, the biggest problem in the last year, if we really sit and look at where did we go wrong, it's novelty. Novelty. That our culture has glorified the new to the exclusion of the traditional. Traditional has become literally a bad word. To say traditional values in the woke culture is to be called a bigot, hateful. You know, if you're to present, when really tradition is, from an evolutionary standpoint, if you see something that is still around thousands of years later, through all kinds of the tempest of history, that somehow it has survived, it's not something to just throw away, right? Because the crises will come again. And especially when you have traditions, look, we're going through a quote unquote plague right now, globally. And dealing with plagues is part of every tradition that stuck around. Well, why? Because if you didn't deal with the plague, your tradition doesn't stick around. So medicine, healing, health, these are aspects of tradition. And Saipan is a very traditional place. It's probably the most traditional place in the U.S. that's under a U.S. flag, I would say. The people here who have the most, all of the political power, all of the cultural power, the Chamorro people, the native people, here in Guam, you know, they recognize that they've been in this place for 3,000 years. At least they know their culture is at least 3,000 years old. And although they speak English and they've adopted a U.S. legal and, let's say, judicial and legislative system, you can probably hear the rain start here too. They are strict adherents still to their traditional culture, and what I've seen is that that's how you withstand. So I was brought here to a traditional sort of place. Tradition has entered into my life, and then I'm also seeing that there's the chance with Bitcoin, which I've been working on for a long time, that if it's going to continue, the structure that it has is that of an oral tradition, consensus-based. It very much looks like a religion to a lot of people who look from the outside in. It's brand new. And so I think that's what's shaping up to me, is to be able to, I believe it's valuable. I believe it's going to help us move through, but to also maintain a tradition and to start that maintenance now of this tradition. And so that's where I'm at now. That's the big watchword for me. I've been somebody who's been a part of a lot of novelty, but tradition has been running through that whole thing as well. So
it's interesting. And I want to get back to Saipan in a second, because I find the move really, it's interesting and fascinates me. But you said something there that caught me, and it was that there's been a lot of plagues throughout history, and traditional medicines and whatnot have maybe helped address that. It seems interesting that maybe what's hurting our world right now with this plague is novelty, is the new, because without, for instance, you and I are speaking on Zoom. Without Zoom, I mean, what would have happened 10 years ago with the coronavirus? You can't say everyone stays home. There's no Netflix. There is no Zoom. There is no favor. So I find it interesting that novelty is really making this quote unquote plague much worse.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with a friend yesterday, and it was related to this report that just came out that this Amish community, large Amish community in Ohio, they're saying they've now reached herd immunity. So it came out in the New York Post and some other places. And that was very interesting to me, that here in this modern scientific situation, the same day that they're saying, oh, the Amish are at herd immunity now and it's not traveling through their community, it's the same day that the CDC director is, and I quote, saying, I'm scared right now. Yeah. And I found that to be so interesting. And it is what you say, you know, when they said, well, what did the Amish do? They said, well, in the beginning, they social distanced and did all of that, but that didn't last very long because they weren't going to stay from out of church. They couldn't. It was that they were more scared. They had more of a fear of God than they had a fear of the virus. And so that's really kind of what it takes. And so they've reached herd immunity. Now, the Amish, in their own understanding of their history, have been through many plagues. And certainly the people who have come to the U.S., what was not the U.S., but who came to the New World, the Americas, and certainly North America, the Pilgrims and whatnot, there were plagues constantly. I mean, I think within the first 5 years of the people landing at Plymouth, there was a plague. Well, they had just come, Plymouth was they basically came into a deserted village that had been wiped out by a plague. That was one of the reasons why, that first Thanksgiving, the reason why the tribe nearest to them didn't come in and just wipe them out was because that tribe had been pretty much decimated by a recent plague. And they saw this as potential allies against the Wampanoag, who were their rival tribe, and which ended up actually working out quite well. And the Pilgrims really helped that other tribe, so the Narragansett. And so, yeah, we act like, the watchword that came up and the thing that everybody kept saying was, well, we've never seen a virus like this. We've never seen a virus like this. We've never seen a virus like this. This is brand new. We don't know anything about this. But to somebody like the Amish, they're like, oh, it's another, we've been through these. We know what this is. We know the pattern. The genetics of it may be different, right? We've never seen this particular, but that doesn't really matter. Have we never seen an upper respiratory illness that can wipe people out? Of course we have. Of course we have. And you're right. It is the novelty and our valuing of novelty rather than instead of saying how this is different from everything else, how is it the same? And look throughout the culture, and the desire is find the smallest difference. What's the let's talk about the things that are different in this. And that's from a product to a person to an idea. How many isms do you need? How many, I'm not a libertarian, I'm a anarcho-Christian, vegan, libertarian, whatever, And it's like, how many ways do you need to split yourself apart? Tradition is about coalescing around a single path. And while there may be many different individuals there, tradition finds the path that they can all follow. Whereas what we're doing is we're dispersing ourselves out, and that's where this problem, I do believe I'm seeing that is the root cause of every problem that we've got right now.
And you mentioned the traditional feel of Saipan where you're at. You hear all the time in election years, people will threaten, I'm going to leave here if the wrong person wins. You did leave during an election year, but not because of the election per se. In fact, it was much before. You had a lot of foresight, basically, and you thought, this isn't going to be good. I believe I heard you once say, and I could totally just see this happening, the smirk on Gavin Newsom's face when he said, we're going to lock down. You immediately knew we got to get out of here. And so talk about that moment and kind of what you did. You got to tell your family, is this what we're going to do? I believe you had also mentioned you had thought about Saipan previous. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How did that go?
So my wife was very open to the idea. There was already a small community that was beginning. Some people that I knew and trusted had come out here and said, yeah, it's legit. This is an interesting place. And so we talked about it, my wife and I. And we were planning on going towards the end of 2020 if we were going to go. But it was still not anything finalized. So we were looking a year in the future, like, if things, however things are, let's see. We had our daughter was less than 1 year old. And so we're like, okay, our youngest. And then when this thing happened, I I knew the pattern. I was like, I know this story. Like, I know where this goes. And I started telling people, and the initial reaction from a lot of people was very much like, oh, you're overreacting. This is like, conspiracy theory, whatever. Those are really from people who don't know me. So they had grouped me. These are all these must be people who have never followed my work, who hadn't been following my work for years, because anybody who knows me will know that I'm no conspiracy theorist. And as a matter of fact, I hate them. And the reason why I hate them is exactly this, because I feel that they're noise. I'm looking for signal. And it's like the boy who cried wolf, that if all the time, if you think every single thing is a conspiracy, then you desensitize yourself, because even it becomes like entertainment to you. You're not really worried. You're not really scared about the pedophile cabal who's running the country and kidnapping kids. It's like it's entertainment that you do online. It's like a fan fiction, or it's LARPing, basically, but the people who know me and who had followed me took notice. And some of them obviously being podcasters and whatnot. And so then that's how a lot of people heard me explain what I understood and believed was on the way. And so, yeah, so we took off. It was basically as soon as Gavin Newsom said, we're shutting everything down here. And it was one of the first places. We were in Southern California. We had moved from New Hampshire back to Southern California when we had my youngest daughter, and just to be around extended family. That's where I'm from. So I sort of told all of them, hey, we're going. And the island here, they were about to lock it down. Basically, no flights in, no flights out. And they were like, the last flight is April 5th. And I said, well, who knows when that will reopen? And some of these islands have not reopened, actually. It a little more so they had to do it here, because being a U.S. territory, it starts to get pretty difficult to deny U.S. citizens from being able to come in here. And they do need the traffic in and out. Like, there's not great medical here. There's a lot of different aspects of that. So I trundled up the family, basically with our luggage allowance. And thankfully, with that extended family being around in that area, they've been able to like ship stuff out from time to time. So that was very helpful. And we got here, we arrived on April 5th, actually, or maybe a little later, maybe April 7th, something like that. Oh, no, April 5th. The last flight came in on April 5th, Sunday, April 5th. And we've been here ever since, but it was that decision where I knew we're going to be in a frog in a pot situation here. And so trust your gut now, because what you don't want is you don't want to get normalized to a situation, which is where many people are right now. Yes. Many people are. I've had this conversation with so many people to where they say, well, yeah, I've been thinking about leaving, but where I am, wherever they are, even if it's Texas or Florida, it's not so bad. I said, is it not so bad though? Like, you put yourself in 2019, put yourself in November 2019, and then you wake up and the world that you live in now is the world that you're in. Are you not fleeing as quickly as possible? It's only, you just don't recognize the temperature because it's the old frog in a pot. Like, you're almost boiling alive, and these vaccine passports is boiling alive. So you're almost boiled alive. It's just the temperature has been slowly turned up on you. And I know no one is immune to that. It's psychologically, we are an adaptive species. We will adapt. People adapt to living 20 and 30 years in solitary confinement in a little concrete box. If someone can adjust their psyche to that, you can certainly adjust to whatever it is, and then you're institutionalized. So I said, I'm not going to be institutionalized. I'm not going to allow my family to become institutionalized. I know what's coming, and we took off, and it's been almost a year now.
It's every time I listen to you, there's you and the interviewer have these weird coincidences, and April 5th is when this episode will drop. So that'll be
There you go.
your anniversary. I want to talk about the new book because there's always a lot of fascinating things to talk with you about. And I think we can kind of, the new book encapsulates a lot of that.
Sure.
It's called Render Unto Caesar: Prophecy, Prophet, and Proof of Work in the Dim Age. And that's one of the things I, of course, have to ask you about, as you are kind of known for coining the term the dim age. For those listening that haven't heard you discuss this, what do you mean by that?
Well, it is a recognition, something that I've been talking about for years publicly. I even did a pretty long YouTube series called The Ascendant Project back in 2016. So it's 2016. Has it been that long? I think it actually has. And it's about the idea that there is a human social cycle and that we see throughout history. Now, this has been noted by, you can go back to super ancient, like Hesiod. This is where we get the idea of the golden age. People say it's the golden age of film. Well, this comes from this ancient Greek writer, Hesiod, who had these 4 ages of men: Bronze Age, the iron, bronze, silver, gold. In this case, it's the move from material ages to mystical ages. And you can sort of see this if we talk about, so the dim age, people would say, well, that's probably related to the dark ages, and it is. So if we say that the dark ages began with the fall of Rome, the thing that sort of identifies the dark ages to us, or the quintessential aspect of the dark ages, is we view a mystical age, an age where religion, what we might call superstition, all of these things is absolutely forefront. And different than the Romans. And what we see that was lost when we say, well, Rome fell, what was picked back up in the Renaissance, which is the return sort of, is the material sciences, really. Everything went into a mystical, and what was lost is the material. So the Roman baths fell into disuse. The aqueducts, people couldn't figure it out. The architecture was lost. How do we do this very lifelike, realistic sculpture, medicine? Go down the list. Metallurgy, all of these things. So they just say, oh, it's lost, this material technology. And we moved into a dark age where that was lost. How it was rediscovered, there's a great book called either The Swerve or Swerve. It's sort of the story of the rediscovery of a book by an ancient Roman poet, Lucretius. That's the book is called De Rerum Natura, on the nature of things. And it's really kind of a beautiful epic poem, but that is also sort of an example of Epicurean and atomist philosophy. And they say that it is the rediscovery of this book and this book spreading around that basically created the Renaissance. It reintroduced the foundation of atomist philosophy. That is, the world is made up of these atoms, and that they swerve together and it's collide into each other sort of randomly. And it's through that the whole world is created. Well, this is the scientific view that we have now. So it was that philosophy in a poetic way that people say brought on the Renaissance and then brought on this material age. So we've traveled through this material age now into its height. And in its height, what we see is, well, you and I are having a conversation on Zoom. If I was to bring somebody from 300 years ago, even one of the founding fathers, right? Ben Franklin, let's say. I bring Ben Franklin and sit him down here, right? Intellect of his day. This is magic, period. Mm-hmm. This is complete sorcery. It would flip his wig, and anything that he thought about him being a materialist, he is immediately a mystic seeing this. And what people fail to realize, and what I've been trying to bring to the forefront for people, is you are living in a world that is magical, and you behave as though it's magical. Your ancestors 200 years ago, or we talked about the Amish, you go to an Amish community, point out any piece of technology. It's not like they don't have technology, right? They have technology, certainly. Point out any piece of technology and they know how it works. They know where you get the component parts. They know how to fix it. They know the mechanics behind it, all of it. And if they don't, somebody very close to them does. But that's not the same for this. That's not the same for Zoom. That's not the same for all of the things, the financial system. That's not the same for, this is magic. To any individual, the world that you're walking through is magic. It may as well have been just like shot out of Gandalf's wand and into your hand. It may as well be. And so when you have an entire globe of people who for them, they are living already in a world of magic, well, then you have entered into a new mystical age. And so this is what the dim age is that the dim age is the return to mysticism. And that material, so the height of the material brings you into the mystical, the height of the mystical brings you into the material. And this is the cycle. And so it's approaching that and seeing, if you start looking around now, you'll see, yeah, truth and facts and stats and logic and reason, that's not what's ruling the day. What's ruling the day is superstition and feelings and things that are channeled and weird, like what, and shape shifting of, oh, there's no such thing as gender. Oh, there's no such thing as this. That's what the mentality of the world is. And we're being pushed into it, and we're pushing ourselves into it.
Let me tell you about the official coffee of the Counterflow podcast, and that is Lorenzotti Coffee over at lorenzotti.coffee. I drink Lorenzotti coffee every morning. It's that damn good. They are a great company run by very like-minded individuals. And what they do is they get their coffee beans imported directly from Italy. Then they package it up, vacuum seal it, of course, and it's ready to be shipped right to you. You got to go check out their storefront at lorenzotti.coffee. They've got these great-looking coffee grinders. They've got beautiful tins that you can get the coffee shipped in and keep it there on your kitchen counter. That's kind of what I do, actually. They've got pre-ground, whole bean, 12 packs, 5 packs, 3 packs. Really, any amount you may need, you will find it on their site. It's LORENZOTTI.coffee. You are loyal listeners to this show. They are loyal supporters of this show, which means you get a discount. Type in promo code BUCK at checkout and you will get 10% off of your order. That's BUCK, B-U-C-K, at checkout for 10% off of your order when you go to lorenzotti.coffee. See you there? Drink it every morning while you listen to this show.
Yeah, something I learned a lot over 2020, but one thing that really stuck with me and that I've been trying to wrap my mind on how to deal with is we're, like you're saying, we're in, at least in America, it sounds better where you're at, but here we're in post-fact America.
Oh, yeah.
So I could go to one of these true believers and say, hey, look at these charts, look at these stats, show the ineffectiveness of masks. I can show you that lockdowns did not work. We can go over every stat. I can adjust for population. They will not, it does not matter what I show them.
No.
They think that people like you or me are selfish. We're killers. We're making this whole thing worse. It's like the Salem witches, basically, is what you and I would be to them.
Yes.
I don't know how to communicate with those people at this point. I'm not sure that it's worth it. Maybe it's an exercise in futility. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so the people who are true believers, they have picked their side at this point, or their side has been picked for them because they were not paying attention. And when you reach into these ages, you are going to get religious wars, inquisitions, all of these things. So you're either a true believer or you're, let's say, on the fence. Now, it's very difficult to be on the fence. And as the true believers, what I call the Church of Woke, starts to take more ground, which it has taken pretty much all the ground at this point, and it's going to take more. It's taken the conscious ground, and it's taking geographic ground as we speak, more and more physical ground. So as they take that, it's going to become more and more difficult for someone to, you're going to be forced to pick a side. And this was what the Spanish Inquisition was basically all about. So a lot of people don't know much about the Inquisitions, but one of the things that you should know that's very important is the Inquisition was not prosecuted against people who refused to convert to Christianity. So when Ferdinand and Isabella basically reconquered Spain from the Moors, there were the Moors, who were the political class, Islamic, North African by descent. They were but for hundreds of years, they had ruled all up the Maghreb into Spain and Portugal. They controlled all of that piece of the Mediterranean. They were a large population, but they were the political class, you could say. So the intelligentsia and the bureaucratic class were Sephardic Jews. So, people might think that there has been a long time hatred between Jews and Muslims. Not true in this case. They were inseparable. The Moors and the Sephardic Jews were very, very tight. And so the Christians, when the Christian kingdom took over, they said, well, here's your options. You can either convert if you are a Muslim or Jew. We'll allow you to convert, or you can leave. You'll be expelled. And this is, a lot of them, including my family, came who were Sephardic Jews, left, went to the New World, after Columbus had come. And, so in the late 1400s, early 1500s, a lot of the people who didn't want to convert left and came. Those who did convert, conversos, they stayed. But if it was reported or you were found that you were practicing the old religion, that you had said you were converting, but then you were caught or reported as practicing the old religion, then you were tortured, killed, executed. Sometimes they would give you a chance to recant after some of the torture and let you live in shame. Sometimes. A lot of the time they were just tortured and killed. And it depended a lot on your political bent. We are in that now, and people don't understand. We're not different people. This is a pattern of history. And if you want to see this, you can see this with the restaurateurs as a great example. So people who said, oh, this is coming down, screw it, I'm shuttering my business, I'm not taking your PPP, I'm not rearranging my seats, I'm not waiting this out, I'm shuttering my business, sorry guys, I'll go elsewhere and reopen a business. Those are the people who left. The conversos are the ones who said, well, okay, I'll go along with it. What do I have to do? Reduce capacity? What do I have to do? Outside seating? Okay, I'll spend all the money. I'll create all of this. And then you see they're still lock them down further. They say, but I can't. No, I can't compete now. I can't do this. And it's like, no, you agreed. You agreed to the first one. You converted. You agreed that what they were saying was real. You agreed to convert. And in exchange, they allowed you to stay open. This is the same pattern, because that was the case for especially many of the Sephardic Jews in Spain, who had businesses, who were in bureaucratic positions, who didn't want to lose what they had. And they said, all right, I'll go along with Ferdinand and Isabella. All right, but on secret, we'll do this. Well, they're the ones who were punished, right? And so we're seeing this. There was no uprising. That would have been all that it would have taken. That would have been all that it would have taken. And this is also happening in the churches as well, which is even scarier to me.
Yes.
That the churches are saying, all right, we'll go along with mass. All right, we'll reduce capacity or shut our doors. All right, we won't give the sacraments. We're going to have Easter, and there are going to be parishes, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, that are going to go along with not having communion. And it's like, well, this is why I say it's the Church of Woke and they've won. This is why I say it's the takeover. This is why I say it's the Inquisition, that it's like they even got, like, you're supposed to die before that happens. Christians throughout history have died to protect less than that. Oh, you think you're going to prevent me from having the body and blood of Christ? Kill me now. That's 2,000 years of Christianity, right? So we are in that situation. People need to see that. and they need to act accordingly. They need to not believe anymore that this is about novelty. They need to understand that this is just human beings acting as we always have.
Yeah, the church part of it just struck me as soldiers leaving the battlefield, basically.
Yes.
Giving in is what that really felt like.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the book is divided up into 3 sections, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is prophecy.
Yes.
Talk about that section and kind of what the idea of that is.
It's very much about what we've or some of the things that we've been talking about now, but it is the idea that that a change is occurring. And so to discuss the nature of the change, talking about what do I mean by mystical and material, and then going back and looking at some of these ideas that are within the various traditions, particularly within Christianity, and understanding that, okay, this tradition has moved through this as well. What's going on? This has happened before in this tradition. What's going on? What does some of these things mean? I delve into sort of the understanding of the Trinity that I've gotten over the last year that's really been helpful for me, moving from the material to the mystical, to see that, these are actually very, very complex concepts that work at a lot of levels. And through that, actually, I've been able to go into the mystical much more and appreciate it much more, and add, prayer into my life in a way that it never was before. And yeah, I would say that's basically the gist of that section. Profit is the second section. That one is about the nature of money in many ways, and the idea that civilization is based on reciprocity. That's really what it comes down to, is us evening out the scales between one another, and that's what leads to peace. And that profit, the entrepreneurial instinct has been an emergent thing. The market is emergent as a way of maintaining peace, especially between strangers, which our ancestors it was almost impossible for them to do. Like, it's incredibly deeply built into us there's us and the other. And what's built into us is to kill the other. That's deeply embedded in us. And the market helps to eliminate the other. The market helps to make everybody us, because we can have this reciprocal relationship with many different people, even people that we've never met, thanks to money as a technology. And then proof of work is an examination of Bitcoin, which is something that I've been working on for, the last 4 years heavily, but I've been involved since 2012, and watching and seeing how it maps on, especially its consensus model as a technology, just really maps on to what we need in terms of reciprocity, and is potentially the next step in us building that new thing as we watch the old thing crumble around us. So building the new thing, but based upon very old wisdom, and it just maps onto the old wisdom very well. So that's basic. That's the gist of the book. That's the circle that it travels in.
What's the cryptocurrency? As you know, you've been in it for quite some time. It seems to be picking up steam, and I see now enemies of cryptocurrency coming out of the woodwork. And maybe if you've been in it for a long time, I have not. Maybe you've seen that along the way.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What's the most common misconception that I want to say that the enemy to cryptocurrency has? Because I see left-leaning people on social media just all of a sudden now going after it,
Yes.
come down from above, that you must attack cryptocurrency. I've seen it saying that it's insult to people of color, or that it's done up by white tech bros and all of this kind of stuff. What do you hear from it that's off the wall like that, and where's that kind of stuff coming from?
It is naturally anathema to those whose agenda is to seize power. And because it takes away a gigantic lever. So although these people who are what we used to call social justice warriors, but what I say is Church of Woke, you will notice that all of their answers, they say there's problems, okay? There's a problem with the climate. There's a problem with white supremacy. There's a problem with misogyny. There's a problem with transphobia. There's a problem, go down to racism, go down the list. Okay, then you ask them, what is their solution? And when you dig in, what their solution is, give me, being them, give me the monopoly on violence of the state. Give me control of the state, and I will fix it because I'm righteous. And that Bitcoin is not good for someone like that, because to them, in their mind, if there is anything that they cannot control, so they have a totalitarian mindset. They say, you listen to somebody who talks about, particularly, I think the biggest one is something like institutional or systemic, it's gone beyond institutional, systemic racism and white supremacy, right? When they want to talk about this one. You think about, well, what do you need control over in order to eliminate this systemic racism? Meaning you want control over everything, the whole system. The only way that you believe that this can be fixed is if you, who you believe you are righteous, are the one in complete control of the entire system. And it's like, wow, the fact that you think you're qualified to be in control of the entire system immediately disqualifies you from ever getting your hands on any power whatsoever. And Bitcoin, whether they know it or not, they get a feeling, because underlying of Bitcoin, not all cryptocurrencies, right? Bitcoin, the nature of it is to disintermediate financial institutions. That is the whole purpose. You read the first page of the white paper, which you don't have to be technical to read. That's the whole thing. Two parties to transact, to move value between one another without the need for a trusted third party. This is a financial institution. So it is a threat to the entire financial system. Well, that is the lever of power. So without that financial system, guess what? There's no stimulus checks. There's no printing of these trillions of dollars. There's no ability to do these reparations. There's no way to punish somebody by taking away their bank account. There's no way to, ban somebody's PayPal or Patreon or all of these things. So for somebody who is after the power of the state to say we are just going to take that gun off the table, they do not like it. And so they will make up any excuse. The biggest one that you will see is you're going to see them say that it uses so much electricity and so is bad for the climate. As though the banking system globally doesn't use any electricity. It's like every bank branch in the world, they don't have an electric bill. They don't leave lights on. They don't leave the air conditioning on, right? All of the people that they employ don't drive cars to get there, right? None of that. The banking system has no effect on the climate and doesn't use any electricity, but Bitcoin, which is this tiny percentage of the economy and uses comparatively a teensy amount of electricity, is this huge problem for the climate. So you're going to see that. You're going to see many things, but underneath it all, what you need to understand is it's something that is taking power away from would-be tyrants, and the would-be tyrants are the ones who hate it.
Is the fact that you're calling it the dim age obviously means there's light shining in as opposed to the dark age. Does something like Bitcoin offer that light to us?
I think there are many things that offer that light. And the reason why I say the dim age as opposed to the dark age is during the dark ages, there was so for instance, this book by Lucretius, De Rerum Natura, it was there, but it was in a monastery, like hidden away, and there were just these groups of sort of clerics, like highly educated clerics, who it was sort of a game for them to go and find these. They spoke Latin, right? Because they were trained at the Vatican. They were trained priests. And these sort of scribes or whatever to go and find these old Roman Latin texts. And it was they were kind of forbidden in a way. Sort of the church didn't want these things spreading, but it was like, ooh, kind of fun and sexy. And, we get together and it's like, ooh, look at this one that I've got, this old Roman thing. And so the monks had kept them, though, interestingly enough, right? The Catholic monks, even though the Catholic Church was like, these should be burned, instead of burning them and tearing them apart, they understood, maybe this is valuable history, and they kept them. Why it's the dim age is the knowledge of how to use all of these things is probably not going to go away, and it's probably going to be available because the protocols, the internet protocols, the capability to create these communications networks that are open is totally possible. But, anybody could run a mail server right now. You could run your own mail server, and some people do. Personal mail server, right? At vinarmani.com. In the early days, I ran my own mail servers, right? You change your DNS, you point it at that. You've got a Linux box somewhere in your house, and you're running your own mail server. That's what most people did. But there was only a few people on the internet. Now, almost no one, as compared to the people who have mail servers, almost no one runs a mail server. Well, why? It's not like the knowledge to do it is not out there. It's relatively simple. You can set it up in an afternoon, even if you have very little technical knowledge. Like there's thousands of videos of how to do it. Nobody does it. Why? Gmail's easy. It's easier. This is the dim age, is that the light is there. We can walk, certain people will walk toward that light. It's visible to everyone in the distance. But most people will choose to stay in the dark because it's much more convenient for them. As opposed to, it wasn't really a choice in the dark ages. You didn't know where to get this knowledge. This knowledge wasn't kind of peeking out. It wasn't one Google search away. It wasn't one Google search away. And that's the real difference. And it's almost more dangerous.
Yes.
So that's the basis of that sort of metaphor.
That's wonderful. My wife and I are into subculture type music, and we often say these young kids today, they should have no questions on how to get this music, discover it, and yet they don't find it because the search that we would have to go to, I want to go to that one store in this city and try to dig through these records, blah blah blah. That maybe there was some kind of beauty to that search and looking for stuff like that. And it made you like a closer knit community that only we have this kind of thing. And it's fascinating that it's at anyone's fingertips right now. And you see young kids that are just ate up with something completely different.
This is something that, again, so this is a parallel that it seems you and I have, because I spent, my early years from 19 through, when my daughter was born, as a DJ and, doing events. And that was a big part of my life, producing music. I ran record labels. And in the early days when I was a DJ, it was all vinyl. So electronic music is what I was playing, and a lot of it from UK. So drum and bass, UK garage, these when they first came out. And you had to actually get the vinyl. And so it was like, twice a week, usually on a Tuesday, because that's when the new records came in. I drive down Melrose on my motorcycle every week on Tuesday, man. Go into the record shop. What do you have that's new? Go and do all the listening. Oh, this is good. This is not. This is good. Get them. And then, we'd go to parties and people would show up to hear one song that I maybe had played 3 weeks ago. And they're like, oh, do you have that? I'd play it. And then when I'm done, they're coming up and they're like, what is that? What is that? And it's like, every DJ knows what I'm talking about right now. And then I would lift it up, show them, and they'd be like, oh, okay. And then they'd come back and they'd be like, oh, are you going to play that? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I got you covered. You know what I mean? Because they couldn't hear it online. Yeah. This is the only place that they could hear it. And that is this makes you so cohesive. And you think, right? It's not that they were different. It's not that 20-somethings now are different, but there was great value in the fact that they were hearing something that probably no one else in the city, not even probably, because sometimes it would be like a white label, and I would have the only record in the city. No one else in the city is hearing this right now. And you can't just go and get it. You can't hear it. So that there was a great value. Because everything is available, that value is very much lost now. And so there isn't a lot of value in finding something that's disparate and different and being in a subculture.
Yeah.
Because the subcultures are gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're gone. The value now is in following the herd. And that's definitely how we've gotten to where we're at.
Let's talk about one of my favorite sponsors of this show, and that is Paloma Verde over at palomaverdestore.com. It's a wonderful small business run by a great couple out of San Antonio, Texas. That would be Carlos and Vanessa. What will you find at palomaverdestore.com? All things CBD, everything you need in that regard. This is your one-stop shop. They've got CBD gummies, CBD pet products, CBD soft gels, tinctures, topicals, and you've heard me in the past rave about the sports cream. I'm going to rave about it again because it works very, very well. I cannot recommend it enough. You know who else recommends their products? My dog, Lux. He's about 10 years old now. He was not getting around as quickly as he used to until I started putting some of it on his food every morning. How cool is that? So I've got a promo code for you guys because you're loyal listeners of this show and they are loyal supporters. It is BUCK, B-U-C-K. At checkout, that will get you 25% off of any purchase over $75. And check this out. You sign up for their emails and then you'll get an extra 10% off, which will then give you a total of 35% off of your order. How cool is that? Again, that is promo code BUCK, B-U-C-K, at checkout, palomaverdestore.com. Let's get back to the show.
What can we? You can limit anything I can ask you,
Go ahead.
Be respectful. Can we talk about the job that kind of
Sure, of course,
prominence, because it's fascinating. As a young 20-something-year-old, I probably would have killed for your old job. Back in the day, I'm older now, so not the same. But how in the world did that come about? And for those who listening who don't know what I'm talking about, he was on a show. Vin Armani was on a show on Showtime, I believe, called American Gigolos.
Just Gigolos. Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you take it from here.
It does relate to kind of the nightlife, being in nightlife in LA and in Hollywood. I found myself, it's an interesting and winding story, but needless to say, I found myself involved with the pickup artist community as it was burgeoning in Los Angeles, particularly around like the Sunset Strip and West Side areas. Some people may have read Neil Strauss's book, The Game. So basically right after the time that he was sort of what I would call the second wave. So he was involved with the guys who were really in like the alt sex seduction fast, like Ross Jeffries, the News Group. So he was involved with the first early guys. Then those guys went on to sort of have their own groups of guys around them. And there was a community that came up, and I found myself, tied in with this group called Santa Monica Lounge. That was pickup artist group. They called them layers. Usually what they had was, so this is what, 2000, probably starting about 2002, 2003, maybe even a little earlier than that. They would have like a forum. They used to have these online bulletin board forums. Some are still around. They're kind of janky looking. This is pre-social media. And we'd have get-togethers and whatnot. And then we would go out and we would practice these techniques. And I started to get very, very good at this. And I think that was partially because the guys around me, we very much viewed it as a self-improvement. How do I build value? This is very much what my first book, Tao of the Gigolo, is about. Like, how do I become a valuable person? What is truly valuable? What is it that people really value? And how can I become that? First, from a sort of selfish, young, I want to get all the chicks. But then in becoming that, to be like, my life is just better. It's just better like this. And it was through that I ended up dating a lot of women, and I decided, for this period in my life, I'm not going to be monogamous, but I'm going to be honest about not being monogamous, which blew a lot of people's minds. I was like, yep, I'm going to go out on a date with a woman, and within the first 10 minutes, I'm going to tell her, look, I don't know what's going to happen with you and me. Maybe we get along great. Maybe we don't. Maybe this is the last time we see each other. Maybe this is the beginning of a long relationship, but I'm going to let you know I'm not monogamous. I'm not going to be monogamous. If that bothers you, we can just end this right here. Weirdly enough, never had a single woman say, let's not. Not a single one. And the guys who took that on were like, is this some sort of magic? Because I'm having the same thing. I thought they would all walk out. No, none of them. Right. So through that, one of the women that I was dating happened to be, she told me several dates in, happened to be a very high-end escort in LA. And I said, oh, this is very interesting. Non-judgmental. I could be non-judgmental because it was like, well, I'm dating all these women, whatever. And she was the one who introduced me to Garen James, who runs an agency called Cowboys for Angels. She and a girlfriend of hers had actually, like, they were drunk one night and they were like, let's book one of these guys. She had a ton of money, obviously, and very sexually open. And she called me and we went out a few weeks later, and she was like, oh, you should do this because this guy wasn't that great and you would be way better at this and I'm going to hook you up. And she did. And it just turned out that they had filmed the pilot with some guys from his agency at that time. And I started sort of moonlighting, working for him. I was senior software developer at the time. So, he was just like, hey, man, would you like to get paid to go on dates with, like, beautiful, wealthy women? And I was like, are you kidding me? What I mean? Like, what? Of course I would. So, every once in a while he'd give me a call and be like, hey, go over to, such and such hotel. And, you're going to have drinks and whatever with such and such women. And then one day he called me and he was like, Vin, you're on the show. Don't say no. So I guess Showtime had greenlit this show that they had filmed the pilot for. And like within 2 weeks, I was there filming. I was in Vegas filming this show, which ended up going for 6 seasons, changed my life completely. Super cool adventure. And obviously was great marketing for my business. Yeah. And which in and of itself was way more interesting than even being on a TV show through that period of time, as you could probably imagine. But those, I guess I'll go to the grave with most of those stories. So, but people can watch the show for sure. So yeah, that's how it came about. It was really just a chance for an adventure. And I definitely had a chance to say no. I had to give up my software career that I built over that time. I didn't know at the time that I was giving it up, but I knew that was a chance. So, but here I am again working on software. So everything works out in the way that it does. It was a great adventure.
As a younger man watching that, I guess what blew my mind is that job existed.
Yeah.
Because of course to everyone it makes sense the other way around would exist. Yeah. We all knew that, but everyone's thinking these attractive rich women go and do this. Mm-hmm. And you experienced it all firsthand.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. And I want to ask you, I heard you mention on another show, and ever since I've heard you mention it, I got this.
Oh, good. Yeah.
The hero with 1,000 faces. And yes. It's something you talk about a lot, but yes. It turned out after you watched the first show or two from that series, you realized it was kind of based on the hero myth, correct?
Oh, not kind of based, like purposely based.
Without you knowing initially.
Oh, I didn't know at all. No, as a matter of fact, there were several times during the period of filming the first season, which I think we filmed for about 8 weeks in Vegas, where I thought I must be being punked right now. I was like, should I just watch? Like, are they playing a trick on me here? Like, what's going on? Because this just seems, it was too unreal, to where I was like, this is just too unreal. And the nature of this particular show, it's kind of interesting as a reality show. A lot of people say, oh, well, reality TV is like scripted and staged or whatever. But the weird part about this, and I think why it was such a cult hit, I mean, they never spent $1 on marketing, and yet it went 6 seasons. By the end, it was the top rated weekday show for Showtime. Incredible ratings, like cult hit, word of mouth. And I think the reason why was the life that we were leading in many ways, and our job was a job of performance. So we're sort of performing for an audience of one. We take on a character, we get into the outfit of that character, the attitude of the character, and then we go and we play this character, which is me, but not really. It's a version of me. It's an idealized version of me. And they captured this on camera, right? And so you get this feeling of like, wow, these guys are these very interesting type of like performance artists. And so basically what we did was we just played those characters all the time on camera. So they're like, either this is real or these guys are the greatest actors of all time, right? And it's like, no, we've been playing these characters for years now. You know, we've been playing these characters for years. And so that was very interesting. And then when I saw the first episode and saw that they had done the hero's journey, and if people watch it and they lay it against the beginning of Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, it's almost shot for shot in the way that they're laying out the story. And they did it in so many different ways throughout the show. And as Joseph Campbell says, whenever you tell this story, people are enraptured. They can't take their eyes. That's what the whole book is about, the hero with 1,000 faces, you know? So
why is that? Why can't people take their eyes off this story?
The story of the hero. Yeah. So this is he calls it the mono myth. He says it exists in every culture, which it does, and throughout history. And screenwriters in the modern age have realized that if you do the hero's journey and you do it well, like you can do it shittily, but if you do it well, you've got a blockbuster on your hands. So what are we talking about? Star Wars. George Lucas has said, I just picked up Hero with 1,000 Faces, just wrote Star Wars exactly like that, and boom, there you go. Right? So Star Wars, The Matrix, my daughter said hi. Star Wars, The Matrix, Lord of the Rings, go down the list. Right? They have this pattern. And if you read Hero with 1,000 Faces, you go, whoa, that's amazing. Hold on one second. Close this door. Close this.
Perfect.
It's lovely. You want to go in the pool? Okay. This is the first time out of all of these that she's decided she wanted to come and talk to me. So the reason why is because it's meant to be an example. So there's a male hero journey and there's a female hero's journey as well. And the female hero's journey looks more like Snow White or Sleeping Beauty. Actually, it's interesting. And Campbell goes into that quite a bit. I'm doing an interview. And so the male hero's journey is really meant that if you follow this, if a man follows this, the end is the return with the boon. And the boon is this thing that he has pulled from his journey that he then gives to his community. So he basically becomes an instrument of the progression of culture. So he travels into chaos, institutes order, and brings back the lesson. And this is what he gives. So this is Bilbo Baggins writes the book when he comes back in The Hobbit. He goes, he writes the book when he comes back. So it's the boon. And in the individual, it is about your ability to then be a mentor for younger men. And also your ability to be a father for the male hero's journey, right? That it's in a way, it's a rite of passage, and traditional rites of passage mirror the hero's journey. So you see the ritualistic, they do a hero's journey and then you are a man. So it usually involves pain. You know, it usually involves some trials, some isolation. It has all of the pieces if you look at it. And you wonder, how does some Stone Age primitive tribe on some island come to a pattern that's the same as Lord of the Rings, right? In a narrative form, but they've condensed it into like, maybe it's a week of a rite of passage, you know? And so why can't we take our eyes off of it? Why are we enraptured? It's built into us. You know, Campbell doesn't go so far. He teeters. Like if you read that book towards the end, he's so close to saying it's biological. It's in our biology. You know, Jung was like, these archetypes are in our biology.
Yeah.
It's they're built into us. Somehow they are. I now believe the same thing about religious traditions, that this is the reason why particular traditions stick around. But as I say in my book, for every one great world religion, there is a mountain made of the corpses of failed cults. We don't see those, And so somebody could say, religion is bullshit and superstition. And it's like, yeah, that mountain over there of the failed cults is bullshit and superstition. But if you see something after 2,000 years, it's resonated with a lot of people. People still can't take their eyes off it in its original form. And that's something, that's something. But it's the same thing with that. It's that hero's journey.
And the Church of Woke, I assume you think is going to fall into the mountain of failed cults.
Yeah, but not without taking a lot of the culture with them. We're in a very much a Tower of Babel moment, I think, or the lost city of Atlantis. All of these stories, they always say, the prophets throughout the Bible, all of the stories say they reached the culture reached its height, and it was decadent and corrupt. All of it had forgotten, it had lost its way, And so it's like, well, what is the way that it lost, if not this path? They look behind them, they see the path, and they stepped off the path, and they went out over here and fell off a cliff or got eaten by a bear or whatever the hell it is. And then some stragglers clawed their way back to the path, and we're like, okay, let's keep walking. It's bad. We're beat up. We got our butts kicked in this whole thing. Let's not do that again. But human beings being what we are, we take things for granted. We forget. This happens as individuals. This happens as cultures and as groups. And there you go.
All right. Well, I got to respect your time. Before we get you out of here, I do want to get to some plugs here in a second.
Sure.
I'd like to give you the floor and really hit on anything you'd like. If you want to end on an optimistic white pill, that's obviously that's false. But any advice, any thoughts on the future, ideas for someone listening to this, looking for meaning or interested in what you said about returning to tradition, anything of that sort?
I think that now is an amazing time to bring into yourself, and this is something that I talk about in the book, an unforgiving practice. So the nature of practice is that if you are a master of an unforgiving practice, so this could be anything. This could be you've trained yourself to be a musician, you're a fighter, you're a writer, a mathematician, a physicist, a gardener, doing permaculture, you're animal husbandry, you're raising something where there are stakes, and you have to become something different, not just knowledge, but you have to become something different in terms of being dedicated to at a certain time of day. You got to go out and do this. You got to set things up. And if you don't, if you're willfully blind, if you miss the mark, sin, what sin is missing the mark. That's what it means. If you miss the mark, it fails. And the more unforgiving it is, the more it really demands of you that you follow a strict path. You will be able to then have that mindset for any practice, which is the reason why you will see, for instance, people who like MMA, that you'll take somebody who's, let's say, a boxer, or even the reverse. Right? But you take somebody who's a boxer, they've been a professional boxer, or they've been a professional wrestler. And then they say, well, they went into a training camp for 6 weeks and came out, and all of a sudden they're an awesome MMA fighter. They've got the strikes down. They've got these things down. Like, what's going on? It's like, yeah, they already knew how to train as a fighter. They already had the eye of the tiger. They already knew about diet, and I'm going to have to wake up at this time, and I'm going to have to be dedicated to this. And they didn't have to learn any of that because they had already this practice. And so now more than ever, there is a grand opportunity to find something that, and particularly you want something where there is a tradition of the practice, because there's going to be so much information about it. So if you've wanted to become a musician, right? If you've wanted to, I know Jonathan Pajot, who I follow, just started teaching an icon carving class. So this is really dealing with tradition, right? So as an artist, you're like, let me get into this. So many people are getting into gardening, and agriculture or horticulture, permaculture. All of these things, now is the time, because there's never been a time where there has been more access to tradition. This is how you seek out the light in the dim age. And it is going to be that practice, getting into the practice of how do I track down what I need to embody and then become something that can sustain me, whether that's sustaining you mentally and emotionally, like with the music, whether that's sustaining you your bodily with the horticulture, whether you're going to get into, let's say, herbal medicine, you're going to grow your own herbs and do that in terms of nutrition, all of these things, grow animals and then, learn how to slaughter them. And maybe it's chicken for eggs and all of these things. There's also entrepreneurial opportunity in that. People are going to be coming back to that. So what I would say is that there has never been a better time. And if people are feeling depressed, they don't know what direction to go, even if you're locked down, most of these are things that you can do inside of that space to change who you are. And in changing who you are, you're going to change the nature of everything around you. So I would say that we are entering the dim age, but that is how you go to the light. That's what has worked for me. That's what I'm pursuing. And, for those people who feel attracted to see Bitcoin for what it really is, I've started that as well. I've got my Bitcoin Mystery School classes. So that's bitcoinmysteryschool.com. We have a lot of those ideas in Counter Markets, which is my newsletter every month, countermarkets.com. And this is going to be an ongoing thing for me. And if people want to follow me, Vin Armani on everything. You just Google me. And I'm trying to lead people to that. I think that this is the path, the hopeful path. I'm really kind of tired of, and I think it's become obvious now where we're heading for everybody. Some people may be in denial, but I can't really help them at this point after a year. So I'm moving towards solutions now, and I think that that's the biggest one. Pick up a practice, man, and move toward the light.
That is wonderfully. That's beautifully said. Wonderful, Vin. And where can they get that new book?
The new book, Render Unto Caesar, Prophecy, Prophet, and Proof of Work in the Dim Age. You can get that at theproofof.work. Theproofof.work.
Work. Got it. I will link to everything you've given us here in the show notes.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir. And wow, thank you. This has been excellent, Vin. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. Thank you, Vin Armani.
Thank you, Buck. I had a great time.
Hope you guys enjoyed that chat with Vin Armani. What a fascinating and just a cool guy. That old job he used to have, I'm telling you, something else. What a good guy to have on the show. Thank you again for being here, Vin Armani. As for us, little housekeeping, I can tell you about some events. That's what I'll do first. April 10th, which it could be already past April 10th when you're listening to this, but if it is, you should have listened when the episode first came out. See what you missed. April 10th, I will be in Birmingham, Alabama at an event put on by the Mises Institute at the Avondale Brewing Company. Jeff Deist and Thomas DiLorenzo are putting on this event. They're going to discuss the damage that the lockdowns have done. And probably it's going to be a lot of damage that we will not see for many years from now. It's going to be long lasting. There's no doubt about that. They're going to discuss that topic. And after they do that, Tho Bishop and myself will be on a panel discussing political strategy post-Trump. So that should be a lot of fun. I love those kind of discussions, especially with people like Tho Bishop. No doubt about it. And May 15th, I will be speaking at the Libertarian Party of Oregon's state convention. You'll have to look online. If you're in Oregon, you should probably already know this. If you're not in Oregon, I doubt you're going to go there just to see a libertarian convention because I'm there. But if you are crazy like that, go ahead and do it. Let's hang out. Thad, my buddy Thaddeus Russell, you know who he is. He will be there as well. We will both be speaking at the state convention for the Libertarian Party in Oregon. That should be a lot of fun. You can follow me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. What else? The Telegram group. Join the Telegram group if you've got that app. Counterflow with Buck Johnson is our room. Subscribe on YouTube. We've been putting out all these videos. My man Justin that produces these videos, he's pumping them out. He puts out little clips. We've got the whole show. You can see me and the guest of every show discussing all of this if you like to do it that way. Counterflow with Buck Johnson on YouTube. And that's about it for us this week. Until next time, you guys have a great one. See ya.
You get split in fucking half, till I call the hologram brass. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.
This has been the Counterflow Podcast, a part of the Renegade Media Network.